The first time I heard this story, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I was attending a family gathering at my grandparents' house. Late into the evening, my aunt leaned in and whispered a tale she heard on a ski trip to Colorado. With every word she uttered, I felt a chill creep up my spine. By the time she finished, I was left with more questions than answers, and a haunting realization that some stories are best left in the past. It went like this. The idea of a snow retreat began to grow among a group of friends from Omaha. Their shared love for snow sports was a driving factor. They dreamed of untouched slopes, the rush of powder beneath their boards, and the thrill of mastering new trails. Mark, an avid researcher when it came to their adventures, stumbled upon a listing online. "It's a real bargain," he'd announced, brandishing pictures of a picturesque log cabin nestled in the heart of Silverton Mountain, Colorado. To Sarah, his ever-supportive partner, the idea seemed enchanting. Emily and Ryan, always up for an escapade, didn't need much convincing. As they embarked on their road trip, anticipation filled the air inside the car. The journey showcased an evolving landscape, urban contours giving way to undulating plains, and eventually to the towering peaks of Silverton. There was a palpable transition from the clamor of city life to the eerie stillness of the mountains. Mark was at the wheel. Beside him sat Sarah, her curly auburn hair shimmering in the intermittent sunlight. She was the chatterbox of the group, her vibrant energy infectious. In the back seat, Emily, with her platinum blonde hair and sharp, observant blue eyes. Ryan, a contrast to Emily's petite frame with his muscular build, was the jester, lightening the mood with his antics and jokes. His laughter, deep and resonant, would occasionally break the serene silence of their journey. The excitement in the car was palpable as they neared Silverton. Trees draped in snow created a mesmerizing pathway, the road winding and curving, leading them deeper into the heart of the mountains. The scenery was breathtaking, but the journey had also been long, and they decided it would be wise to stock up on supplies before ascending further. The town of Silverton itself seemed caught in time, a blend of modernity and history. Quaint wooden houses sat comfortably beside more contemporary structures. Following the sign that read, "Gas and Goods," they pulled up to a rustic gas station. The old gas station had the charm of an era long gone, with faded advertisements for products that might not even be in production anymore. An old bell attached to the door jingled merrily as they entered. The scent of aged wood mixed with the sharp tang of gasoline greeted them. Behind the counter stood an old man, his skin bearing the tales of many suns and winters. His eyes, though aged, observed them with a sharpness that belied his years. He nodded in acknowledgement and went about his business as the group gathered their supplies. On their way to the counter, Mark casually mentioned their destination. "We've rented a cabin up on Silverton Mountain for a few days. Heard it's a great getaway." The old man's hands, previously deftly counting change for another customer, paused mid-air. He looked up, the previous warmth in his eyes replaced with a mix of concern and something more profound, almost like recognition. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "That old cabin? Yes, it's been there a long time, but its foundations, they are much, much older." Emily chuckled nervously. "Old foundations? Sounds rustic. Perfect for a little adventure." The old man's gaze intensified. "It's not the age of the cabin you should be wary of. It's the mountain itself. It has memories, desires, and a way of claiming what it wants. If you feel something, off, don't ignore it. And don't overstay your welcome." The group exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah tried to lighten the mood. "Thanks for the advice. We'll be sure to keep it in mind." The old man gave a curt nod, watching them intently as they left the store, the bell's jingle echoing long after the door had closed. The weight of his words hung in the air as they continued their journey upwards, the mountain silhouette looming ahead, silent and watchful. When the rustic cabin finally came into view, it was just as the pictures had shown, a haven amid a snowy paradise. Yet, there was also something the photos hadn't captured, an intangible essence that hinted at stories yet to unfold. Mark, with a hesitant pride, said, "Looks like my online bargain was legit." But the tightness in his voice suggested that even he felt the undercurrents of the mountain's enigmatic aura. The first day was idyllic. The slopes, glistening with a fresh layer of snow, were perfect for their snowboarding escapades. There was the unmistakable thrill of being the first to carve paths on untouched white expanses. But as the day turned into night, the weather took a menacing turn. What began as gentle flurries soon transformed into a relentless snowfall. By the next morning, the cabin, once a cozy retreat, began to resemble an outpost on an alien world. The snow piled up around them, morphing the once familiar surroundings into an unrecognizable frozen wilderness. The car, their one link to civilization, was now a snow-covered mound, rendered immobile by nature's fury. They were trapped, the weight of their isolation sinking in with each passing hour. Inside the cabin, an oppressive unease began to take hold. Small occurrences that would usually go unnoticed now took center stage. A flickering light, a shadow that seemed slightly out of place, a draft that felt unnaturally cold. Whispers about what was out there circulated, amplifying the paranoia. That evening, while they all huddled together for warmth, Sarah mentioned she felt someone, or something, watching them. Emily, usually the voice of reason, admitted to hearing faint, melodic laughter from the forests, accompanied by what sounded like soft whispers. At first, she thought it was a trick of the wind, but as the night progressed, the laughter became more pronounced, and at times it seemed as if the whispers were calling out to them. Ryan, always the skeptic, tried dismissing these tales as mere products of cabin fever. He rationalized that the isolation and unfamiliar surroundings played with their minds, but even he couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something off about the mountain. He didn't mention, but through the thick veil of the snowstorm, he thought he saw the silhouette of a young man standing at the edge of the woods. Just as he was about to alert the others, the figure vanished into the white abyss. But it was Mark who changed the most. The once lively and boisterous man became increasingly withdrawn. He began to sleep less, and often Emily would wake up to find him not in bed. Instead, he would be found staring out of the window, eyes fixed on some distant point, murmuring incoherently. His pale complexion, juxtaposed with his sunken, dark-circled eyes, made him almost unrecognizable. "It's them," he'd sometimes whisper when confronted, without elaboration, his voice echoing a dread that sent shivers down everyone's spine. The pressure of confinement, combined with the eerie happenings, began to wear them down. They started jumping at shadows, seeing things in the corner of their eyes, and hearing faint murmurs in the silence. Innocuous conversations turned into heated arguments, suspicion creeping into every interaction. Each creak of the cabin, each rustle outside was met with widened eyes and fearful glances. Their tight-knit camaraderie, built over years, began to disintegrate, with mistrust and fear poisoning their bonds. On the morning of their fourth day, as the grey light seeped in through the frost-covered windows, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the cabin. It was Sarah. Her face, pale as the snow outside, eyes wide with terror, voice tremulous, she uttered 3 words that deepened the icy dread that had settled in their hearts. "Mark is gone." The bed he had slept in was empty, a cryptic note placed on the pillow. In Mark's hurried handwriting, it read, "They need me." Everyone exchanged bewildered glances. Mark's bizarre behavior now seemed like a precursor to a deeper mystery, one that was rooted in the history of the cabin and the events that may have taken place there in the past. The day of Mark's disappearance was consumed by a frantic search. They trudged through the dense snow, calling out his name, their voices echoing eerily through the dense forest and bouncing off the cold, towering mountain faces. Night settled, and with it came a heart-wrenching realization. Mark might be lost to them forever. Sarah, sleep-deprived and racked with sorrow, settled in front of the fireplace, staring at the hypnotic dance of the flames, perhaps hoping they'd provide some solace or an answer. Their search for Mark, while desperate and initially fruitless, inadvertently led them to an unsettling discovery. Kept in an old trunk, a remnant from a time long past, they stumbled upon a metal box, its contents protected from the ravages of time. Inside were a series of old newspapers, their edges yellowed, but the print still legible. Sarah, her hands trembling, spread out the papers on the cabin floor. The headlines spoke of a devastating avalanche that had occurred in 1974. Avalanche destroys mountain cabin. 4 adults declared deceased. Below the title, a heart-wrenching account detailed the tragic fate of 2 couples who'd sought the serene embrace of Silverton Mountain, only to be engulfed by its icy fury. The bodies of the victims were never recovered. Other newspapers kept track of it further. As years passed, the catastrophe became a haunting legend of Silverton. In remembrance of the souls lost that fateful night, a decision was made to erect a new cabin atop the ruins of the old. Crafted with love and respect, it stood not just as a retreat, but as a monument to the lives taken too soon. With every log and nail, the community wove their condolences and hope that this new shelter would serve as a sanctuary rather than meet the tragic fate of its predecessor. Emily, trying to make sense of the words, whispered, "These stories, they feel so familiar. It's like I've known them before." It felt as if history was echoing its sorrowful tale through them. The parallels between their group and the victims from 4 decades ago were too uncanny to dismiss. At dawn, as the wind howled outside, a faint thud echoed on the cabin's door. With apprehension written across their faces, they opened it to find Mark, or what was left of him. His face was pallid, eyes sunken with dark circles beneath, lips cracked, and skin mottled with frostbite. The Mark they knew seemed eclipsed by a shadow. Their sense of unease deepened, not just because of Mark's mysterious disappearance and frost-bitten appearance, but due to the fractured tales he began to whisper. His gait uneven, he began to murmur unrecognizable words, his voice layered as if 2 people were speaking through him simultaneously. His words, at times coherent and at others fragmented, hinted at stories of tragedy, eerily echoing the narrative they had read in the newspaper clippings. While Sarah tried to nurse Mark back to health, Emily, previously the composed one, also started displaying oddities. She would often hum tunes that no one recognized and draw symbols on the fogged-up windows. Sarah, already devastated by Mark's condition, now watched her best friend slip into an inexplicable abyss as well. The tensions in the cabin reached a fever pitch. Ryan, trying to keep a semblance of control, became the mediator, trying to help Mark and Emily, who seemed to be fighting an internal battle for their very sanity. Ryan couldn't shake the growing unease that clawed at his gut. Mark and Emily, once lively and predictable, had begun to display unsettling shifts in behavior, their actions oscillating between periods of eerie calm and moments of irrational outbursts. It was as though they were battling internal storms, their identities overshadowed by unseen forces. Ryan pulled Sarah aside. His voice was hushed, eyes widened with fear. "I don't think that's Mark and Emily anymore," he whispered shakily. "It's as if something else, some other spirit, has taken hold of them." The weight of his words settled heavily, the possibility of possession seeming all too real in the haunting embrace of the mountain. The once cherished retreat had turned into a crucible of supernatural events. The cabin seemed to reverberate with echoes from the past, wrapping everyone inside in a chilling embrace. Emily's transformation became even more profound. With every passing hour, her behavior mirrored Mark's. Sarah, already grappling with Mark's altered state, was now tormented by watching Emily slip away. The walls seemed to close in on them, the past's weight becoming increasingly palpable. Ryan, feeling the pressure, oscillated between his role as peacemaker and the urge to flee the cabin and its haunting secrets. The once cherished mountain escape was morphing into a living nightmare, a vortex of the past and present intertwining, trying to claim them in its cold embrace. The stories from decades ago weren't just tales. They were echoes, resonating through time, and Mark and Emily seemed to be their unwilling conduits. The next morning saw an escalating battle for control. Ryan, the most unaffected, became the group's anchor, trying desperately to hold on to the slipping sanity of his friends. Sarah fought hard against the ebb and flow of consciousness, feeling herself drawn into a trance-like state, memories not her own flooding her mind. Mark and Emily, the most deeply ensnared, seemed to be on the verge of being completely lost. Their internal battle reached its zenith. Mark, seemingly overtaken by a powerful force, let out a soul-shattering scream, his voice echoing the pain of ages. The shockwave of that scream tipped over a lantern placed precariously close to the window. Flames caught the worn-out drapes, and in moments the cabin was ablaze. The urgency of the situation momentarily broke the spirit's grip. Sarah, snapping back to reality, cried out, rallying the group, "The gear! Get the snowboarding gear!" The race against time and the encroaching flames pushed them to their limits. With every fibre of their being resisting the spirit's pull, they managed to don their gear amidst the smoke and chaos. As they hastily donned their snowboard gear, a sharp realization struck them. Mark, still distant and struggling with his altered state, was unable to ski. Panic momentarily set in, the weight of their predicament pressing heavily upon them. But amidst the chaos, Ryan's quick thinking emerged as their saving grace. "The sleeping bag!" he exclaimed. Frantically, they bundled Mark into his thick, insulated sleeping bag, zipping him up till only his face peeked out. Using makeshift ropes from their gear, Ryan fashioned a harness, ensuring Mark's safety as they prepared to descend. "We'll pull him down," Ryan said, determination evident in his voice. With the icy winds biting at their faces and the ominous mountain looming behind, they began their treacherous journey downward, Mark's makeshift sled trailing behind, proving once again the depths of their bond and ingenuity in the face of adversity. Down the mountain, with the burning cabin now a distant speck, their minds began to clear. The spirit's grip weakened with distance, their voices fading into faint whispers. By the time they reached the base, Mark and Emily had regained consciousness, their memories fragmented and hazy. The burning cabin on Silverton Mountain would remain a testament to their ordeal, a beacon of their resilience against the unexplained. The day following their harrowing escape was a mix of recovery and reflection. They sought shelter in the town, where word of the burning cabin had already reached. The locals offered them warmth and shelter, but conversations were often punctuated by curious glances and hushed whispers, a reminder that Silverton Mountain held its secrets close. An old lady listening to their story leaned in, her wispy grey hair framing a face lined with age and wisdom. Her eyes, deep-set and observant, studied them intently. After a prolonged silence, she simply murmured, "History likes to repeat itself," her words hanging in the air like a prophecy, reminding them that the mountain's tales were intertwined with the town's very fabric, and their story was just another chapter in its age-old legacy. The group managed to recover their trapped vehicle. Using shovels borrowed from the town, and with the help of a few good Samaritans, they dug out the snow-covered car. Its once shiny surface was now marred with scratches and dents, a testament to the mountain's fury. The journey back to Omaha was a long one. The car's heater hummed gently in the background. Every so often, one of them would glance back at the mountain, its peak now hidden by clouds, as if expecting it to reveal some answers. Looking at the scene, Mark spoke, his voice different, more distant. "After so many years, the sight of these roads is a bittersweet reunion." The car went silent. His words carried a weight and nostalgia that wasn't his own. It was a subtle but undeniable confirmation that while they had physically left Silverton Mountain behind, some remnants of its mystery clung to them still.